Fresh from his wartime visit to Kyiv, U.S. President Joe Biden rallied NATO allies in Poland on Tuesday, reaffirming unwavering support for Ukraine and committing to bolster the alliance's eastern flank against Russia.
1 year ago, the world was bracing for the fall of Kyiv. Well, I just come from a visit to Kyiv, and I can report Kyiv stands strong.
Biden's speech at Warsaw's Royal Castle comes as the war enters its second year, with no end in sight. Hours earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed that Moscow would achieve its objectives in Ukraine, accused the West of plotting to destroy Russia, and said Russia was suspending participation in the 2010 New START treaty, its last major arms control treaty with Washington. While Biden said every inch of NATO territory would be defended if it was attacked, he disputed Putin's assessment that the West is a threat to Russia.
The United States and the nations of Europe do not seek to control or destroy Russia. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. And millions of Russian citizens who only want to live in peace with their neighbors are not the enemy. This war was never a necessity. It's a tragedy.
Biden spoke after meeting NATO ally and Polish President Andrzej Duda, a vocal proponent of stronger Western support for Kyiv. That followed Biden's unannounced trip to Ukraine on Monday, the first time in recent memory a U.S. president traveled to a war zone not controlled by U.S. troops. Earlier on Tuesday, at least one Russian rocket slammed into a busy street in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson, killing 6 people, leaving a pool of blood on the pavement beside a mangled bus stop. Moscow has denied deliberately targeting civilians, but cities across Ukraine have been devastated in missile and drone attacks, and thousands of civilians have been killed. Biden condemned the attacks and said the world would not look away from atrocities committed by Russia.
A dictator bent on rebuilding an empire will never be able to ease the people's love of liberty. Brutality will never grind down the will of the free. And Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. Never.
Just 2 weeks ago, tragedy struck this small town, this small, close-knit community.
The Environmental Protection Agency on Tuesday ordered rail operator Norfolk Southern to clean up contaminated soil and water at the site of a train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, that was loaded with toxic chemicals. The order also requires Norfolk Southern to attend all public meetings with local residents and to submit a work plan for EPA approval for the cleanup. EPA Administrator Michael Regan.
But let me also be crystal clear. Norfolk Southern will pay for cleaning up the mess that they created and the trauma that they inflicted on this community and impacted Beaver County residents.
The U.S. top federal environmental official on Tuesday visited the homes of locals impacted by the February 3rd Norfolk Southern derailment and held a roundtable with community members. Eastern Ohio Congressman Bill Johnson.
The company knows this accountability is coming. They know that it's there. I haven't sensed any pushback. They know the kinds of things that they're going to have to do for the long-term remediation, the removal of the tracks, the removal of the soil, getting that contaminated soil out of there. They know that this has to be done.
The wreck caused a fire that sent clouds of smoke over the town, forcing thousands of residents to evacuate while railroad crews drained and burned off chemicals. Norfolk Southern said in an emailed statement that it recognizes its responsibility to thoroughly and safely clean up the derailment site and pay for it, adding, quote, "We are going to learn from this terrible accident and work with regulators and elected officials to improve railroad safety." Although no fatalities or injuries have been reported, residents have been demanding answers about health risks and blaming Norfolk Southern, state and federal officials for a lack of information regarding the crash. President Joe Biden tweeted Tuesday the EPA's order to Norfolk Southern was common sense, and that this is their mess, they should clean it up. Norfolk Southern shares were down Tuesday afternoon and have slid double digits since February 3rd.
As developers continue to build up Miami's glittering skyline, particularly in Brickell, the city's financial district, some community members are digging in, literally. They are pushing developers to postpone plans so that archaeologists can preserve prehistoric artifacts found at building sites. As unlikely as it might seem for Miami, on Brickell Avenue, teams are digging up bones, pottery, and tools that potentially stretch back thousands of years.
On the south side of the Miami River, at this larger parcel called 444 Brickell Avenue, archaeologists have discovered an incredible set of artifacts, an incredible site that dates back not just a couple hundred or a couple thousand years, but that stretches back 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years into the past.
This is William Pessel, an archaeology professor at the University of Miami.
You can build for the future while also respecting the past. And that's what we're hoping to have happen at this site.
In fact, modern-day Brickell, which sits at the mouth of the Miami River, was once the site of a vibrant settlement called Tequesta that the Spanish encountered in the 16th century. To preserve that history, community members called for building work at 444 Brickell Avenue to be postponed in early February.
Billionaires come here and intimidate us with their money. They have to work with us.
Longtime resident Ishmael Bermudez, who knows the value of excavation, is one of them. The artist and amateur archaeologist lives in a brightly colored single-family home, the last one in Brickell, under which he began excavating decades ago. He has discovered fossils and even human remains, which were given to local authorities, and is passionate about preserving Miami's history.
When you discover special sites, you got to work around them and also save them for the eyes of the world.
Related Group, the developer of 444 Brickell Avenue, did not respond to requests for comment, nor did the City of Miami's Historic and Environmental Preservation Board. Residents like Bermudez are hoping Miami's future is one that will also embrace the past.
But it's up to us, the people, to make sure that this don't get destroyed, whether it gets sold or not. It's got to stay here the way it is, because it's a cultural center for the city of Miami, state of Florida.
I don't know where you're drawing the line. That's the problem.
U.S. Supreme Court justices on Tuesday expressed uncertainty over whether to narrow a legal shield protecting internet companies from a wide array of lawsuits. Up for debate, a federal law called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which protects internet companies from liability for content posted by their users. This case marks the first time the Supreme Court is examining the scope of Section 230.
I thought that Section 230...
In a major case involving Google-owned YouTube, the justices heard arguments in an appeal by the family of Noemi Gonzalez, a U.S. student studying in France who was fatally shot in the 2015 Paris attack. The lawsuit accused Google of providing material support for terrorism and claimed that YouTube algorithms unlawfully recommended videos and messaging by the Islamic State militant group, which claimed responsibility for the rampage that killed 130 people.
And I don't understand how a neutral suggestion about...
Justice Clarence Thomas questioned the family's lawyer, Eric Schnapper, on whether YouTube should lose immunity if algorithms are, quote, neutral.
I'm trying to get you to explain to us how something that is standard on YouTube for virtually anything that you have an interest in suddenly amounts to aiding and abetting because you're in the ISIS category.
The computers at YouTube send you stuff. You didn't ask them for, they just send you stuff. It's no different than if they were sending you emails. That's affirmative conduct.
The justices expressed concerns about limiting immunity for internet companies, while also revealing skepticism that these firms should be shielded for certain types of harmful content. Justice Elena Kagan at one point lightened the mood.
You know, these are not like the 9 greatest experts on the internet.
Kagan and Justice Brett Kavanaugh both suggested Congress might be better suited to adjust legal protections for internet companies if warranted. Justice Samuel Alito questioned Lisa Blatt, the lawyer representing Google.
Would Google collapse and the internet be destroyed if YouTube and therefore Google were potentially liable for posting and refusing to take down videos that it knows are defamatory and false?
Well, I don't think Google would. I think probably every other website might be because they're not as big as Google.
Noemi's stepfather, Jose Hernandez, told reporters outside of the court that social media companies have a big responsibility.
Well, I think they should be careful in what they showed in the media to stop all this ISIS terrorism that's really hurting a lot of innocent people. So they should do something about it.
The lawsuit was brought under the U.S. Anti-Terrorism Act, a federal law that lets Americans recover damages related to an act of international terrorism. Google and its supporters have said a win for the plaintiffs could prompt a flood of litigation against platforms and upend how the internet works. A ruling is due by the end of June.
This baby sea lion was a reluctant participant in a recent nasal swab test in Peru, where more than 700 sea lions have died of bird flu, as veterinarians and health experts worked to understand an alarming outbreak of the virus that has spread to mammals. Javier Jara is a veterinarian with Peru's National Forestry and Wildlife Service.
What we remember initially started with pelicans last year. Now it's affecting these marine mammals.
In recent weeks, crews in protective plastic suits have collected and buried hundreds of sea lions from several beaches along Peru's central coast. According to government data, Peru recorded its first case of the virus in birds in November, and since then, 63,000 birds have died from the disease. The World Organization for Animal Health said bird flu has killed more than 200 million birds across the globe since the beginning of 2021, either from the disease or mass culling. On Monday, the incoming chief scientist at the World Health Organization said governments should invest in vaccines for all strains of bird flu that exist in the animal kingdom as an insurance policy in case of an outbreak in humans. The United States, Britain, France, and Japan have all suffered record losses of poultry from outbreaks of avian flu in the past year. The WHO said earlier this month that the recent spread to mammals needed to be monitored, but that the risk to humans remained low.